Hello, good day, and welcome to the Point 99 podcast. Before I roll off the intro, I actually had a little bit of a chuckle with my colleague that I mentioned in the last episode, the chap who unfortunately didn't reach his goal at the Ultra X Scotland 110km about the intro. He listened to all of season 1, and when I told him that things had picked up season after season, and also mentioned that I'd spoken about him on the show, he asked only one thing. Do we still have the intro? Yes, we do. And I don't even need to write it down anymore. So here we go. I am your host and your running companion, Mr. Steve. That might be while you're listening during your long runs, while you're catching your breath in between your interval sprints, or as you master your tempo sessions. As for the Point 99, it's a podcast for every runner of any ability. What you hear is what we are, honest chat with everyday runners about just that, everyday running. Humble guests being humble about who and what they are and what they have achieved. The show has had one mission since its inception, to help everyone along whatever path their journey with running is taking. It might be through relatable guests and their unique and inspiring stories, shared experiences and lessons that are learned throughout all of it. And now we also have short educational segments designed to help all of our knowledge and, well, make us more knowledgeable about the wider world of running. Hopefully by sharing all of this with you, you'll feel inspired and motivated to do amazing things, smash your goals and be the best running version of you. And with that, the intro is done and we can get our teeth stuck into this, our 10th and final episode of Season 6 and the last of the season's format, before we rejuvenate things and move over to purely episodic releases. After a fantastic reception and response to last week's guest, which I was really in no doubt about, Mr. Ed Blackwell, better known as Ready Eddie Run, this week's finale has big shoes to fill, but I already know that this guest that's joining us today is more than capable of filling them, and more so. I'm actually going to go out on a limb and say that the conversation I had with this Triple Crown King of the West Highlands is one of the best and most natural interviews I feel that we've had on the show. You might not agree, once you listen to it at least, but I just felt like the conversation flowed before, during and after I hit record. That, of course, is certainly no slight on any past guest. That's purely down to my fairly shoddy and haphazard interview skills most of the time. But without giving too much away and really wanting to keep the focus on the interview when we get to it, I'm going to do the usual self-indulging and recanting my own week in running before we visit our last of the pre-recorded segments and generally move along from there. We also have a follow-up email to the previous that we received, the Near Browntown email that was shared a couple of episodes ago. I'm going to dip my toe into that one also, partly because of the novelty of actually receiving listener-submitted feedback and emails, but also because it genuinely was really nice to read and it put a massive positive spin on my week as a whole. For myself, it was a return to consistency and regular sessions with my running this week. I started the week strong with a couple of 6-milers before getting lost in the woods after work with one of my Highland Cross buddies. Those are the sorts of runs I actually do really enjoy. The joviality and confusion of trying to figure out what route you're on and what route you're meant to be on, and how relaxing and honestly freeing that they can feel. I guess until you genuinely get lost and that all turns to panic, but like you're hearing now, we obviously didn't get lost. We managed to find our way back onto the route we should have been on, and albeit the session was a little bit shorter than we had originally intended, it was a great place to visit, a great new location unlocked for me, and somewhere I will 100% be going back to explore a little bit more. That's something that I want to cover on my own Instagram, some fantastic views over Inverness. So if you are interested in seeing and hearing a little bit more about that particular route, then please give me a follow on Instagram if you don't already. Overall, however, it felt great to get back and building towards the next event, especially after enjoying a couple of relaxing weeks of laid back, less pressure training while I let the legs, body and mind recover. But I was so used to such full on training week on week that it is kind of hard not to do it when you stop. Hopefully though, that will all continue, as I've also reintroduced gym work and I should now be getting back on the saddle, albeit fairly late on now given how close we are to the Highland Cross. But I'm pretty confident in my cycling ability. I was, as some of you know, a cyclist before I was a runner, did a lot of cycling and a lot of cycling events. So my confidence is pretty high there, as long as my backside can take the punishment that only a racing saddle on a road bike can give. Some of you might know where I'm coming from there. But yeah, I need to actually get out, put the bike into some form of good order, give it a little bit of a service and clock at least a couple of miles on it before the event rolls around. To take a slight back step though and return to the email that I mentioned that we received, and I've been given the green light to let you know that the almost guest to Browntown, the Code Brown recanter of the what you shouldn't do before or during race day with the gels. It is a long-term listener of ours. I've mentioned him many times in the past, and it is the superb Anthony. Ant runs on plants. Ant has been such a huge supporter for the pod pretty much since our inception, and I'm genuinely grateful for that. He's stuck around. His email this week also hit fairly hard in the feels as he shared some of his takeaways from the past 2 or 3 episodes. Genuinely nice feedback, but it's also feedback that is great to refresh ourselves about, and as a consequence, I'm going to build a whole episode around it. I will return to this email at that time, but the general context was about the various aspects of egotistical and self-entitled runners on the internet, either purposefully or unintentionally diminishing the efforts of others because they want to gain entries to certain events or some attention for themselves, making it more about times and running faster than just the running community embracing everyone, celebrating your achievements no matter what the time, what the distance. I have touched upon it in the past, but like I say, it's always worth revisiting and reminding us all that we all do have different goals, we all have different paces, we all have different abilities, and it's about celebrating all of that together. Anyway, after he shared his feedback, he signed off by sharing that he finds the podcast has a way of making the running conversations feel personal and authentic, kind of like sitting around after a race, talking with friends over beer and sore legs. That was the part that put a very positive spin on my week and a smile on my face. It's honestly what it's always been about. Just being real about everyday running and everyday runners. Trying to take the ego out of all of it. There's no fun in being one of these school ground bullies, making fun of people about times or distances, because why? Why would you? I think we all know that. I think anyone listening for a long time or who is connected through some of our guests, I think we'll all know that, but it's always worth saying. Authenticity is also one of the main aims for the podcast. I don't really like falseness. It's why I don't always agree to some of the people who approach me to be on the show. We do sometimes get those. Because they're not wanting to come on for the right reasons. They're wanting to come on for self-promotion or to try and push something to the community that I don't think would work well with you guys as the listeners. I want to keep it as a focus on real people with real running, with real unfiltered and unfakified stories. And hopefully I can make that last for a long time now that we are back, of course. But yeah, authenticity always trumps fakery. But before we move on and share a conversation that is a shining example of honest, authentic and wholesome running with genuine care for the running community, they are regularly in contact with, running alongside or giving their time to help support various events. let's slow things down and ease into this week's segment. It's a good bit of luck that this topic and this week's guest lined up, actually, because you'll hear it mentioned in the conversation as we target the long game and big goals. With big goals come a big self-responsibility to prepare yourself to achieve what you might think is unachievable, or improve in areas or with speeds and times you thought impossible. But to do any of that, you often need to slow down and enjoy a segment all about Zone 2 running. So far in these series of segments, we've looked at things that might be considered basic when we're looking to step up from being everyday runners for fitness to running towards a goal, a distance, a pace, or training for a specific race. The next topic in the series is no different, as we have a very important topic that a lot of runners know about, but one that they regularly ignore, being Zone 2 running. Zone 2 is no different in its importance to any of the other topics. It's in fact probably one of the most important topics to understand, especially if you're looking for that magic key that will unlock your ability to run faster. If you, however, spend enough time scrolling through Strava, you'll start to think that everyone you're connecting with is running every run fast and hard, and that they're chasing PBs during every run. And yes, that might be the case for some. It isn't, in fact, the case for all. But the people who you do see chasing fast, hard runs all the time, you might start to notice that they're the same people who pick up regular niggles and injuries, and they're the people who wonder how on earth could it ever have happened to them. It's going to sound a little bit sexist towards my own gender, but it is usually the guys that are susceptible to those sorts of niggles and injuries and thoughts. And that's me speaking from experience. The reality is that's not how good training actually works, or good endurance training. In fact, some of the best improvements you can make in your running come from doing something that feels almost counterintuitive or too easy. It's just running slower. Or, using the name we're going to use in this, running in Zone 2. Zone 2 running is one of the most important tools you can have in your arsenal in order to build endurance, improve efficiency, and to stay injury-free. But to better understand how running slower can truly help us, we first need to understand what Zone 2 running actually is. Most heart rate training models divide efforts into 5 zones. You can actually see these on your Strava and Garmin apps with and without paywalls. And I'd imagine for other apps, like the Apple one, that they're maybe covered there too. These 5 zones are simply Zone 1, very easy recovery. Zone 2, easy aerobic effort. Zone 3, moderate to steady effort. Zone 4, hard to threshold effort. And Zone 5, maximum effort. So Zone 2 sits in that sweet spot where breathing is steady, where you can hold a conversation and you feel like you can keep on going for a very long time. It's not just jogging aimlessly, but it's also not pushing the pace or working up too much of a sweat. A rough guide in order to work out what your Zone 2 would actually be if you don't have Strava, Garmin or Apple, but you have a heart rate monitor, is about 60 to 70% of your maximum heart rate. You'll be able to get your maximum heart rate by going for a maximum effort sprint at the end of a hard session, tempo session, and watching that sucker skyrocket. But if you are going to try and do that, try and do it safely. We don't want anyone having a heart attack just because Mr. Steve said to go and try and find out what your maximum heart rate was. But honestly, the easiest test is simply to try and talk full sentences without gasping for air while you're out for a run. If you can do that, you are likely in your Zone 2 territory. But let's move on to why Zone 2 is important in unlocking your true potential. The truth is that Zone 2 is where a lot of the real endurance adaptations happen when your body becomes more efficient in using oxygen and fuel. If you run Zone 2 regularly, you'll find a few things may improve. Firstly, it will help to build your aerobic engine. Think of endurance fitness like building this engine. Zone 2 running strengthens the aerobic engine, which is responsible for producing energy by using oxygen. The bigger and stronger the engine is, the longer you can sustain effort before fatigue or failure kicks in. It's essentially laying the foundation for everything else in your vehicle and the base that speed work can later lie upon. Secondly, your body gets better at using fat for fuel. If you listened to the segment on carb loading, you might think that this sounds familiar, but remember, fat isn't for carb loading, it's for endurance. One of the biggest benefits for easy effort running, zone 2 running, is that it improves your body's ability to burn fat as fuel. That matters a lot for longer runs and races, especially because your carbohydrate stores, that magical glycogen that we spoke about so much, are limited. Fat stores, on the other hand, are essentially endless. So the more efficiently your body can run on fat as a fuel source at lower intensities, the longer you can preserve glycogen for when you really need it. Thirdly, you improve your running economy. Zone 2 running also improves something called the running economy, which has nothing to do with how much your new pair of shoes cost in today's financial climate. It's actually how efficient you can move at any given pace. Over time, Zone 2 mileage helps to strengthen connective tissues, build muscular endurance, and improve stride efficiency. All of which means that running at the same pace eventually starts to feel easier. The easier any given pace feels, the lower your heart rate. And so your Zone 2 territory will actually change. Running the process in repeat improves your running economy, and the next pace starts to feel easier again, so on and so forth, and to the point where your Zone 2 is a lot faster than when you first started the process. Finally, it can help your body to recover faster. It should come as no surprise that hard runs are stressful on your entire body and most of its systems. Running hard can place significant stress on your nervous system, muscles, and joints. That's the reason a lot of the uneducated non-runners will try and tell you that running is bad for you. Because if you try to run hard and fast all of the time, then yes, running is actually bad for you. Zone 2 running, on the other hand, well, it's low stress enough that you can do it frequently, daily even. That's what allows runners to build consistent weekly mileage, which is the biggest predictor of improvement. Altogether, it equates to the fact that consistency and patience can beat trying to force speed at the risk of breaking yourself every time. There is, however, a problem, and that's the grey zone problem. It's where a lot of runners accidentally go wrong, and I know I have myself in the past. They don't run easy enough on easy days, and they don't run hard enough on hard days. Instead, they end up running most of their miles in what can be referred to as the grey zone. The grey zone is that middle effort where it feels like a workout, but it's actually not quite hard enough to push any speed, but it's too hard to allow full recovery. So you end up feeling a bit fatigued without getting the full benefits of either easy or hard training. You may also have heard other runners refer to it as junk miles, and now you know what that means. If you look at how an elite endurance athlete trains, there's quickly a pattern of consistency that can be seen. Roughly 80% of their running is easy aerobic work, ergo Zone 2 running, with only about 20% being high intensity load running. This is what the super nerdy professional type running people, coaches, trainers call polarized training, and it's an idea that's actually pretty simple. Most runs should be easy enough to recover from quickly. Think about going for a gentle jog, and once it's over, you quickly feel like it was nothing, without any significant tells in your breathing or your heart rate. You feel normal, and you have a normal everyday heart rate. You've recovered really quickly. Then those smaller number of runs, they could be properly hard and focused at a particular goal or pace. These are the runs where you need to lie down once you're done so you don't fall down, where you can feel your heart in your throat and you can't hear anything but white noise or your own heartbeat. Those are the efforts that take a hot minute to peel yourself off of the ground and to feel a fraction of your normal self. And the quicker you can recover from those hard efforts, that shows a significant leap in your fitness. The faster you recover from any run in particular shows just how fit you actually are. But the true challenge of all of this, and the tallest hurdle that you're going to have to overcome in order to run slow or run in zone 2, is ego. Again, it's one for most of the guys out there. It doesn't really plague females as much. Running slower is always going to feel strange. You're always going to feel like you're fitter than the pace you're chugging along at, that people are going to be passing you, that other people are going to judge your average pace on Strava. You just have to get over the fact that Dave down the road might be looking at your Strava and thinking you're going slow. But training pace and running pace are completely different things. They're actually the real indicators of a runner in tune with who they are and where they want to be. So while Dave is stuck trying to beat his 5k parkrun PB, you'll be smashing out improvements left, right and centre. Zone 2 running isn't about trying to prove your fitness on every run. It's about building fitness over months and years. And ironically enough, slowing down during training will in fact lead to improvements, to running faster and to breaking personal records. There are, however, signs to look out for to help identify if you are running too hard too often. If most of your runs are feeling like a grind, well, that's your first clue. But if you feel constantly fatigued, that your fitness is plateauing, that you frequently pick up minor injuries, or you have an elevated resting heart rate, and that every run is a battle that you have to force yourself to overcome, well, they're all signs that your easy runs aren't actually easy enough. For most recreational runners, a great Zone 2 week that still feels balanced could simply look something like 2 to 3 Zone 2 easy runs, 1 long run at mostly Zone 2, 1 faster effort session, and any optional recovery runs in and around those. The majority of the mileage still sits comfortably in easy aerobic zones, which means you build endurance without constantly digging yourself into a recovery hole. If you're also doing it right, you might find that you're able to run multiple sessions of easy runs in any given day without feeling the negative effects of taking things too far or going too hard. At the end of the day, one of the best ways you can think about easy running is to remember that you're not training your ego, you're training your engine and all of its associated systems, and that good engine care responds best to consistent, sustainable efforts, not daily all-out ones. But final thoughts time. And yes, running hard and fast will always have its place. Of course it will. Speed sessions are important, tempo runs are important, race pace scenarios are absolutely critical, but none of them will go particularly well if you aren't supported by a strong foundation. That foundation is not only built, but maintained through lots of patience, controlled Zone 2 running. It's not going to feel glamorous, look impressive on Strava, but it's going to look amazing on those big race days when you're killing it, you're taking names, and you're blowing your personal records out of the water. So, if your next run feels a little bit slower than you expected, just go with the flow. It might just be what your training needs. Sometimes the smartest thing we can do while running is simply to take our foot off the gas and cruise along to help build our fitness. I'll be the first to admit that I wasn't really that knowledgeable about Zone 2 for a very long time. I was also a bit of a naysayer. I didn't believe that slowing down could help you speed up or achieve some of the phenomenal distances you see more and more people push themselves to achieve. It's something that I am more on board with now, but perhaps not the best at practicing or committing to. I often get far too carried away with the tempo of my music or wanting to get home if the weather's not particularly great, but I guess that's something that we all do. But when I do commit, I see and feel the difference. It will totally change your whole running game and the speeds that you can ultimately push yourself to and the distances that you can go. If as with any of the segments that I've shared so far, you feel that I have missed something out or that I'm maybe slightly wrong with how I've researched and read it, please let me know. I'd also like to maybe go back to some of our past guests, some other people that were maybe naysayers at one point, they might have changed their mindset now, and find out how Zone 2 works for them now that they've fully embraced it. And with that, it's also a great way to move into the conversation I had with this week's guest. I'm going to let the usual guest intro do the talking on this one. But yeah, I loved every minute of speaking to this man. So let's not dither. Let's roll the tape. There are some guests that you feel like you already know so well, even before you sit down to record with them. That can be down to how supportive and welcoming they are to everyone within the running community, both new and old, how consistent and disciplined they are with their own training and documentation, complete with stunning photos. Their past visits to other great Scottish running podcasts, or in this man's case, a combination of all three. This guy has an incredible story, one of family, weight loss and phenomenal achievements of superhuman endeavour, with a consistency to his training that sees him logging more miles than most, mostly while many of us are still snugly tucked up in bed. Behind all of it, there is someone simply trying to balance big adventures with being present where it matters the most, at home with the family. This one has been a long time coming, and I'm over the moon to finally welcome this legend to the Point 99. So please join me in welcoming the man whose beard is better than yours. He's a West Highland Way wizard, a Triple Crown King, the 4am Run Club's most active member. It can be only one man. Welcome to the 99, Mr. Stevie McKenna.
That was some intro. I don't know who you're talking about, but I'll certainly sit here and chat to you.
That has been a while since I've stumbled on the intros, but I'm glad to have done it to you because it's everything that wrote there. I'm so happy to have you here, and everything there's all true. You're like a phenomenal guy to follow, and I'm so pleased to welcome you and share your story with the 99 audience.
Well, thank you for inviting me on. I've been looking forward to it.
I know, honestly, I've been looking forward to having you. I've had the pleasure of meeting you, I think, once in person.
Yeah, we caught a run a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Just worked out you were down in Glasgow and I had the week off, and you'd arranged a 6 o'clock, 6:30 run through the Clyde Tunnel, and I thought, yeah, I'm going to come in and be part of that.
You were a brave man as well. It was like a week or maybe not even that before your wedding.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I've saying there, some guests you feel like you know so well anyway, and I followed you for a while, but even that meetup, it felt like we'd already known each other for years, and that was just the first time meeting.
But yeah, I mean that goes both ways, because back then I was running every week and listening to you in my ears as I was running, and then it was just nice to actually, as it is with everybody that you kind of follow online, it's nice when you actually get to meet up face to face and go for a run.
Yeah.
And like you say, it just feels like you already know that person.
Yeah, I think Instagram's great for that, especially if you follow someone for a while. It's just like it's your pal you've known for years.
Yeah, it's the same with Instagram, Strava. It's so long as you approach it in the right manner and you approach it in supporting everybody trying to hit their goals, and not taking it from the point of view of comparing yourself to other people on it. You know, from my point of view, the only runs I compare is my run yesterday, my run today, and my run tomorrow. That's all that matters to me. If I'm seeing other people on Instagram or Strava hitting their goals, then I'm getting 100% behind that.
Yeah, and I think that's a position we've all been in at some point, is we have compared ourselves to other people, and it's a really bad rabbit hole to go down.
Yep.
And you just live such a happier life with your own running when you just compare yourself to yourself and where you want to go and where you've been. That's maybe a good segue actually, from where you've been to where you're going. I've already kind of mentioned this to you before we hit record, but I suspect many people tuning in today might be fairly familiar with who you are and where you've come from, a bit of your backstory. But I also know there's going to be quite a few new people to the 99 with fairly recent guests. The audience kind of has grown a little bit, so they might not be familiar with you. I think with that being the case, and I don't want to bog down on it too much, but could you start off by introducing who you are and a little bit of your background, where you started off with your running, and the fundamental reasons why you became so active as you are?
So I am 46-year-old from Motherwell. I guess I consider myself just an everyday runner, which now looking back on it is a silly thing to say. But when I was younger, I was never into running. My brother, that was his thing. He done it all the way through school, went on to represent Scottish schools. That was amazing. I just left him to it. Then back in 2013, I had to get my ACL reconstructed in my knee. Nothing to do with running. It was snowboard related, but as part of the rehab for that, to ultimately get back snowboarding, they introduced some running, and something just clicked. I just enjoyed it. And then set myself a target of I'm going to do a 10K, smashed that within the first few weeks, and then ultimately gave myself the target of the 2014 Edinburgh Marathon. I had to look over there at my medals on the wall. So yeah, done the Edinburgh Marathon, ticked that box, done various other distances just with friends over the years,
Yeah.
and then that ultimately ended up with me doing the 50K at Run the Blades in 2017. And in my head, that was it. I had completed running. I'd had 10Ks medals, 21K. I'd done a couple of marathons at that point, and then done 50K. So that was it. I was an ultra runner. There was nothing else to do in running. Um, that's not to say that I drifted away from it. I would still go to the odd event with friends, but it was more a go and do the run and then go to the pub for the afternoon and possibly the evening as well. Um, that all changed in 2020, which I guess a lot of people's running stories kind of changed in 2020 when COVID came along.
Yeah.
My one is related to that, but it's more to do with my daughter who turned up at the start of COVID. And she was, when I say turned up, she literally popped out 12 weeks early. So she was 12 weeks premature. And you can imagine at that time when there's a respiratory borne virus going about, it was terrifying.
Yeah.
So she spent 3 months in the local neonatal unit, and we were grateful that it was the local one because it could have been Aberdeen, it could have been Edinburgh, it could have been Glasgow. It just happened to be there was a bed literally a mile and a half from the house here. Um, the nursing staff were fantastic. Things got really serious at one point where we were only getting to see her for an hour a day, and without the nursing staff there looking after her and giving us updates and looking after us, that could have been a really horrible experience. So at the time, we decided that, hey, we need to do something to raise some money for the unit. And I thought, well, it's time to dust off the shoes and go and do another marathon or do something for them. And that something was going back to Run the Blades and doing a 50K. And at the time, we raised £1,600 for the unit.
Wow.
But once that was done, at the time I was 40. And so in my head, I'm like, I'm 40, I'm out of shape. Even though I was running 50K, I was still over 100 kilograms. And I'm thinking to myself, well, when my daughter's 10, I'm going to be 50. So when she's wanting to do things, I want to be in a shape that I can go and do it. If she wants to go ape, I don't want to be the dad that's sitting at the side saying, on you go, I can't go up there and do that. So that was it. It was just the starting point from there of, okay, well, in my head, like I said, I'd completed running. I was like, what else can I do? And that's when I started looking at Glasgow, Edinburgh as the next kind of step. Well, if I've done a 50K, can I do a 50 miler? And it's such a massive step up. It's such a massive, difference between doing 50K going to, I think Glasgow, Edinburgh is about 92K in total.
Yeah.
But it was just that new motivation of, well, it's not just about me anymore. It's about other people in my life. And it just kind of snowballed from there.
Well, certainly knowing now in the same position as yourself, having a little man, you're
Yep.
wanting to do the best you can possibly do. You want to be as fit and healthy as possible, so you can see them growing up. You can take part, like you say, you can go to these places. Not that I'm going to be climbing up anything that he's going up. I've got a fear of heights, but you can be active and you can be fit and able to do it without, like you say, being that guy, the dad at the corner eating a Greggs, not
Yeah.
able to take part. I also said before we hit record, this was a selfish thing on my part, because I think anyone listening kind of knows that my plan is, and I'm signed up for Glasgow to Edinburgh this year. So you've also hinted at that there. I'll
Yeah,
be I'll be trying over the course of this interview to get as much information about um, competent ultra runners and tips and tricks as possible, because I've only done the one proper one. I'm not going to class lapping. But no, that was a great recap, I think, for anyone that's maybe heard before, but also for anyone that does want to kind of hear a little bit more in depth. There are more in depth recounts of that story and of your introduction on Press Play and Run, and uh,
run till you're done.
Run to Your
Run till you're
Done.
done was the most recent one. Last
Yeah.
year we talked about the West Highland Way on that. So
So
that's probably a good one. We went into quite a lot of depth about, quite a lot of detail about what happened, like from my surgery up to running the West Highland Way last year. So
yeah.
that kind of tells the whole story.
No, I think we'll direct anyone there if they want to learn a bit more. And I think it's great also to share that, to love to
Yeah.
other podcasts, and much, I would say, better podcasts than here. Um, but moving on from there, then you've done some phenomenal events since you've returned to ultra running, to distance running. Before we get into any of them, can I ask you, as someone who's ticking off some incredible distances weekly, whether it's from your 10K this afternoon to probably at 30, 40K this weekend, do you ever find yourself saying, I'm just going out for a 10K if you know you're running a 40K?
I so if I'm going out to run 40K
Yeah,
and
if
then
you know
just kind
you've
of
got like a
chunk it.
40K at the weekend or something, and someone
Yeah,
says to you, oh, how far did you run today? And you go, do you go, I've just run a 10K?
I was guilty of doing that. So I work remotely, so I've got a Teams meeting every morning at 9:15.
Hmm.
And again, all my colleagues know what I do, and they kind of know my schedule as well, so they know my longer runs are later on in the week. And I used to be guilty of using that word just and only,
Yeah,
and it's a word that I hate using, and I hate other people using it as well, because there's no such thing as just going for a 10K or just going for a 5K.
yeah,
If you go out for a 5K, that's a hell of a lot further than most people will do that day.
yeah,
Uh, and a 10K is something that some people will train for 10 weeks to do, but it's still a massive achievement for them. It's all relative. So if I'm going out, I went out for a 10K at lunchtime today, but that's relative to what I'm doing.
yeah.
It's to the point I went out today and I didn't even bother putting my hydration pack on. I felt naked, because normally I'm just in that habit just now of I've always got my pack, just to so you're used to what it feels like. So
Familiarization.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
come race day, you're like, oh, so I went out without that today, and I'm like, oh, this feels wrong. But yeah, I try to avoid using the word just and the word only, and I'll call other people out when they're talking to me about the runs, especially if they're telling me that they went for a shorter run compared to what I've got on my schedule.
Yeah. No, I,
Yeah,
I just found it. I was when I was running today, and you saw my own run. It's something that came up in my head, because if someone says to me, and again, a lot of my colleagues know what I do, they'll say, "How far did you run today?" And I'll say instinctively, "Oh, I just did this." Because in
yeah,
my head, I'm comparing it to what I've either done at the weekend or what I'm going to do. But it's got such a negative impact on anyone else that's maybe, as you
yeah,
say, running 5K. And a lot of people do train
yeah.
for 5Ks and 10Ks and stuff. So as a early days ultra runner, I want to kind of ask that question of a
It's
seasoned ultra
one
runner.
of my favourite runs of the week, and it's something that I'm not getting to do just now because of where I am in my training plan. But
Mm,
there's a local run club called Aroma Run Club based in Wishaw, out of a wee coffee shop, and the basic spiel is you turn up 8 o'clock Sunday morning, and you go for a 5K run, and it's done as a group.
yeah,
So there's no, there's guys there that could go and run sub 25Ks. There's people in between all the way up to, like, I think maybe about 32, 33 minutes just now.
yeah,
But we all run as a group, and it's one of my favorite runs of the week, because it's just about sharing that experience with everybody.
yeah.
And then suddenly somebody will get a PB without even realizing they've got a PB. They'll stop their watch at the end and it'll beep up, and
Yeah.
everybody celebrates that.
So parking the
Like,
ego and
yeah,
having that time with
yeah,
other people. Yeah.
yeah. It's and like I say, it's I'm not getting to it just now because of the mileage I'm doing, and Sundays are my rest day, and I'm having to protect that just now. But I can't wait until I come out of these peak weeks to then get back to it because it genuinely is one of my favourite runs of the week.
Then moving kind of then building upon what you're kind of currently working to, how far have you come with your training? How far have you still got to go? And can you give the audience an idea of what you are training for?
So I'm training for the West Highland Way race this year. Last year I done all three races on the West Highland Way. There's the Devil of the Highlands, the West Highland Way race, and the Highland Fling. And if you do all three of them, that's the Triple Crown. So I done that last year. Genuinely, when the ballot opened last November, I wasn't that interested in putting my name in because I think because I had done all three last year, and it was for me it was such a goal throughout the year. And then I was on the West Highland Way mid-November for just a social run that was there, and I was speaking to one of my crew, Donna Duncan, and a couple of other people who were all excited and buzzing because they'd already put their names into the ballot. And they turned around to me and they said, "Why am I not putting my name in?" Um, and I didn't have an answer. Um, but one of them said to me, "Don't ever take for granted that just because you've done it this year and you were fit enough to do it this year, that you're going to be able to do it next year or the year after the year after that."
Mhm.
And I thought, you know what, they're right, they're right. So I put my name into the ballot. Deliberately left it to the ballot closes at like midnight on the 30th of November, and I was setting the Christmas tree up for the kids the following morning. And it got to like 11:55, and I thought I'm just going to put my name in. And yeah, I got pulled out. So I didn't know what the motivation would be like for me this year. But once I got into the swing of things, I started setting some goals, and yeah, it's just been brilliant this year. It's been absolutely brilliant. So I'm currently on week 20 of a 24-week plan. The race is 4 weeks on Saturday.
Mhm.
So I'm just kind of coming through my peak block just now. And then once I get through this week, things start to ease off a little bit from there.
Tapering into it. So you feeling
Yeah,
you feeling well, you're obviously looking strong for it. I've been following the journey and some of those mega runs you've been doing, but are you feeling strong and ready for it?
I am. I am. I learned I learned lessons from last year. Last year was brilliant. Don't get me wrong. Like I am over the moon with my achievement last year. But I think within a few weeks, I was sitting down looking at the activity on Strava, and I'm like, okay, well, I could save some time in that checkpoint. I could definitely save some time here. If I look after my feet, then certainly the last 20 miles should be quicker.
Mhm.
Um, and then also I've just been trying to build volume into my training plan this year. So that's why there's been a lot of ridiculously early runs, and as my training plans went on, my volumes kind of built up. But no, I feel in a much stronger position. But at the end of the day, it's the West Highland Way. It is 96 miles. Anything could happen.
Yeah. Weather could be anything at this
It
point.
could be. It could be. It could be. For all that we had baking hot temperatures last year, it could start raining at 1 o'clock on the Saturday morning
Yeah.
and keep raining until 12 o'clock on the Sunday. So you just don't know.
I remember last year you did a lot of recce runs and you were out with some of the other guys that were taking part and some of your other kind of connections through the ultra community. This time around, you've not been doing as many recce's because you're obviously more familiar with the route. But I've seen more track work. Have you been feeling that the additional track work is helping you in ways that maybe running
Yeah.
purely trails might
Um.
not?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's been a mix. So there has been tempo sessions and speed sessions in there. But I think some of the ones that stick out from the track, they're not actually speed sessions. So I've done a couple of ridiculously long runs at the track.
Yes, you
I've
have.
I've
Yeah.
I've had I've basically done a track marathon, which is a running joke between myself and Alison Jardine, one of my friends. Um, there used to be a series that happened in East Kilbride called the Track 105 series, where they had
Yeah.
a 10k, a 21k, and then a track marathon. And the year I wanted to do it, they didn't have enough numbers, so they couldn't do it. So I just decided last year I was going to do it myself. But it's great from a mental point of view, just trying to callous your mind
Hmm.
because if you're going out to do even in the marathon block, if you were going out to do like one of your longer runs for 20 or 22 miler, you would sit down and you would plan that. Well, if it was me, I would sit down and plan that as a loop. So if I get to like 11 or 12 miles and I'm not feeling it, well, I either stop and I walk 11 or 12 miles back, or I need to keep on running to get back. So that's
Yeah.
always my preference. Whereas going to the track, every lap, you can quit. You could quit at any point, and your car is right there in the car park, and you can just walk off. Um, so it's just a good one to get basically just get comfortable with being in your own mind and not trying to focus on that massive number that's in front of you. Because when you start off, you know, I had my watch set up that all I was looking at was a lap number and a time per lap. So I'm just getting that feedback on every single lap. I've got a rough idea of what time I want to run per lap, and then was I a couple of seconds up or was I a couple of seconds down? And all you're doing is just focusing on that, and then before you know it, you've got halfway through it, and then yeah, you just tick them off lap by lap by lap.
I actually mentioned the marathon, and then you also ran a 50k around the track as well. I mentioned
Yeah,
to someone I was speaking to recently because I knew you were coming on, and he said, "How is that possible?" And like you said there, you have to make your mind callous to the idea that you're going to just be
yeah.
going round and round. He
Well,
said, "Surely," he turned around and went, "No, it went continually round the same way."
yeah, yeah. No, just kept on going, kept on going. But again, like you've touched on the fact that you're going to be doing Glasgow, Edinburgh. There's going to be parts on that course is set up quite nicely where the checkpoints are kind of like maybe 8 to 10 miles
Yeah.
apart, but then there's one section between Linlithgow and Ratho, and it's 13 miles between there. And by that point, you're already about 37 miles in. So that is going to feel like the longest half marathon you have ever done in your life. And it's the canal, so it's flat. So
Yeah.
it's good to just kind of try and get yourself into that mindset of don't check your watch, don't check what your pace is, don't check what the distance is, just run what's in front of you for, the next mile and
I
just keep
think
on going.
that's the part that's scaring me about it, and you've done it, you very familiar, but having run Amsterdam Marathon, and it's very flat, and that's the part that killed me at the time, was how incredibly flat and monotonous a lot of it is, not
Yeah,
having any change of elevation, not having the kick in the calves to kind of keep you awake. Then on the flip side, having had Ultra X just a couple of weeks ago, and the amount of elevation you're doing there, it's insane. The ups and downs compared to what I'd been doing. By the time I got to, let's say, 28 miles, I was feeling it. I was having to do the walk jog. So it's the
yeah,
idea that the monotonous flat, sure, it's not going to be anywhere near as hard as the elevation, but it's going to be hard in so many other ways of turning your mind off to
yeah,
just continually beat
yeah,
yourself up.
yeah. So that's where you can build these sessions but into your training plan,
Yeah.
where you can go and do something that just seems to anybody else looking from the outside in just looks ridiculous, but there's
Mm.
actually method to the madness.
Yeah.
It's a session I would recommend. Just take one of your long runs, go to the track, and just switch off.
Well, we're very lucky actually. The local track for me is Inverness. Working in Inverness, they have just taken it away. Megan Keith's handed it over to some contractors because it's getting finally, after being about 20 years out of date, it's finally getting a new surface. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm gonna go do a Stevie McKenna. I'm gonna go do laps of that track when that is open. I'm gonna go in. I know I'm a member to the local to that leisure centre, so I could go in when they open at 6, or I know there's a sneaky way in, and I'll say to the managers, if I go in earlier, are
Yeah,
they okay with it? I know the lights won't be on, but it's at my own risk. So no, I
yeah.
think I'm
I
going to try and replicate you in that one.
Yeah, I'm not saying that there's a couple of holes in the fence around my local track, but it's better to ask forgiveness and seek permission sometimes.
So no, four weeks to go. I'm in no doubt that you're absolutely going to nail it, and I would even say blow last year's time out of the water, just seeing how your training's been going. All things going well, fingers crossed, and
Yeah,
weather
yeah.
and all the conditions, etc. Um, without kind of diminishing the fact that that's coming up, do you have your mindset on anything else in the future then, building from that point?
So I do have a couple of other things penciled in for the rest of the year. I've got I'm going back to run the blades, and I think 4 weeks after. 4 weeks after the West Highland Way. I've got a couple of friends who are doing their first 50Ks, so I'm still in two minds whether I'm going to go and actually race it and run it myself,
Yeah.
or whether I'm just going to go and kind of run with them on it. I'll see what state I'm in after the West Highland Way. And then after that, it is just kind of slotting back into a training block for the Cheshire Ring 100 at the end of September down in Manchester.
Yeah.
It's for all that the West Highland Way is classed as a 100-mile qualifier for various other events. I want to go and I want to see that 100-mile pop up on my watch.
Yeah.
So, and plus it's a completely different event. It's completely different to what I've been training for just now. I also want to see what sort of time I can get for a 100-miler. So yeah, that's the plans for the rest of the year.
And then going forward from that, is there any dream races that you maybe want to do as well?
I don't know. Like I heard you talking on the previous episodes about kind of goals. I mean, I've been so focused on ultras for the last few years. I've been ticking off PBs during my ultra training. So last year I had a great year, and I think I hit PBs in every distance from 5K to 50K. But the one that kind of sticks out for me is my marathon PB. That dropped. I think I was sitting about 3 hours 18 just now.
Yeah.
But bearing in mind that was in the middle of a 60 or 70-mile week.
Yeah.
And part of me's thinking, what could I do if I had a proper 16-week block at that with a proper taper, and then an actual race, not just me out running 26 miles on my own.
And that's it. Solo running is so hard. Race day, completely different. You're just atmospheric, other people running, finding your groove. Yeah, if you're at 318 at the moment, that's a sub 3. That's a sub 3.
I don't know if sub 3 is there, but what one day there's maybe a BQ there. One day maybe, especially now that I'll be 47 this year. Another 3 years, it suddenly gets a little bit easier for me.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I'm trying to remember what the BQ is for you at the moment. It must be around about that sort of ballpark.
It's about, I think just now for my age group, it's about 315. So I would still need to take a good chunk off that. But obviously in a few years' time, I go up in age category, but then obviously the times will also come down over the next few years. But
I'm thinking good for age for London, aren't I? That's slightly different to BQ.
Yeah, London's harder to get into than Boston.
Is it? I thought it was absolutely round. I thought it was a little bit slower for good for age.
No, I think London is harder for a good for age than so. But we'll see. We'll see what happens.
See how the cards get drawn.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm obviously conscious of time. I don't want to keep you all night, especially when you've still got more run to do. So I'm going to kind of hopefully tick off a few things here. Out of all the events that you've done over the years, what would you say is your favourite and why?
The West Highland Way. Without a doubt, the West Highland Way. Before last year's event, everybody talked about the West Highland Way family, and I didn't get it. I didn't understand it. Like I'd been to other ultras, and it was I mean, you'll have experienced the Ultra X. You talk to other people. You're running along. You share a couple of miles with somebody.
I met someone that you're familiar with.
Exactly. You met Gabe from Motherwell that I sometimes go running with. But it's that way you make those connections, and then you'll follow each other's progress through Instagram or Strava or whatever. But that's really all that happens at these other events. Whereas on the West Highland Way, they talk about how, because you've got Support Tuesday and other runners, everybody comes together into this family for the one weekend.
Yeah. And
I never really got it until I got to Riverdenning, the checkpoint there, and my crew was sleeping. And fair play to them. They'd been up since whatever time the following morning. They'd got there, they'd fallen asleep. So I ran into the checkpoint and I messaged them on the WhatsApp group to say, I'm here, where are you? Because one of them was supposed to come and meet me. And it took them 90 seconds for them to get back to me. And in that 90 seconds, I had 4 other people come up to me and say, are you okay? Are your crew not here? What do you need? We've got X, Y, and Z. We can sort you out with this and that and this. And at that point, it just clicked. It was like everybody comes together to get as many people as possible to that finish line in Fort William. And even though, technically you're all racing, you're not. You're just trying to get everybody there. So yeah, that's probably my favourite event so far.
Actually, I skipped over something I was going to ask before I asked that question. Um, would you ever consider a proper goal at a backyard ultra?
I I don't know. So I went along to the B Craig's Backyard Ultra
That's what I was
last
thinking.
month.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I went along. Kaylee Webster she was the race director at B Craig's, and Kaylee was originally on my support crew for the West Highland Way last year, and then she injured herself and had to pull out. But straight away, with the support she gave me and just a lot of messages and everything, I said to her, look, as soon as she talked about B Craigs, I was like, I'm there for the weekend. Just tell me what you need me to do. Um, and it was fascinating to go along and see it from the other side, but then also as the race developed to see the tactics that people had. There was one guy, Michael McVie, who went out and he was smashing out laps or smashing out yards at like 37, 38 minutes, having been on the go for 20 hours, 22 hours.
Yeah.
And then there was other people who were just coming in at like 52 to 55 minutes, quickly doing what they need to do and then straight back out. So it was good to see that side of it. I don't know. I'm not saying never. Um, but yeah, I would probably like a shot at it at some point. Definitely not B Craig's because of the elevation there.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. Like 500 foot elevation on a yard. That's a killer. But yeah, I wouldn't rule it out in future.
There's some good ones out there, and with Kaylee in mind as well, she absolutely demolished the field at Golspie a few years
Yep,
ago. It
yep.
was also Golspie, but there's so many on the go. There's probably one that would
Yeah.
suit you
It
to a
was
T.
it was good. It was good seeing. I didn't know what the crowd would be like. There was obviously a lot of ultra runners that
Yeah.
were coming along to do it. There was a lot of people who had backyard experience that were coming along to do it. There was a lot of, I'm going to say younger kids coming along, but compared to me, younger kids coming along, like guys in their twenties, yeah, guys in their kind of early 20s, mid 20s, and it was brilliant to see them getting involved in it and the way they were all just hyping each other up. It was good to see that it's pulling people from all different walks of life. And then there was other folk who turned up. There was one boy that will stick in my mind who I was on the DNF tent through Saturday evening. So when you get to 12 yards, that's 50 miles. And a mother and son came up, having got to 12 yards, done their 50 miles, and that was them. They tapped out at that point. And speaking to them, the furthest that boy had ran beforehand was 16 miles. And he turned up and done 50 miles that day. And it
Wow.
was but you could just see that. You could just see the penny dropping almost of like, well, hey, I've just done this. So what else
Mhm.
can I do with my life? If I can turn up and do something like this, then if I apply myself elsewhere, what else can I do? So that was phenomenal to see that.
Another one that I kind of skipped over on my own head as well, in my urgency to not hold you back too long. UTMB, is that something you would ever
Um,
want to do?
I yes and no. I would like to go out and run in Chamonix at some point.
Hmm.
Um, but you just see the circus that comes with UTMB, the prices, and hearing some horror stories from the archaeotrician, and let's not even touch on the UTS down in Snowdonia with
Yeah.
the way they opened up the entries to the 100K and then just conveniently forgot to tell people that they chopped Snowdon off of the course. So yeah, I'm in no rush to go and do something like that. I think there's plenty of local events. There's plenty of events in the UK on a
Yeah.
smaller scale that deserve more attention.
I actually, as soon as I asked that question, I saw your face. I knew the answer.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, before we kind of finish off then, have you got any useful advice, not just for me, but anyone that's maybe looking to up their running game, to increase their distances and kind of take their early steps or forays into ultra distance running? The things that you maybe wish that you'd learn when you first kind of kicked off your journey.
Um, I guess for me is you hear everybody saying this, but it's the old run slow to run fast. You know,
Yeah.
you the amount of people I see getting into running and wanting to step up to the longer distances, and yet you'll see them go out and they'll run 10K every day, but they'll go and they'll smash that out as fast as they can,
Mhm.
and then they'll maybe do their longer run, and it's a little bit slower. And you're like, well, why don't you just slow those runs down, and you're getting more time on your feet, and then you're just building that aerobic engine, and then when you're increasing your longer runs, you're going to get benefit from that. I mean, that was one of the biggest changes for me, was just slowing everything down for this block, because I'd come off the back in December. I had kind of set myself a target of a sub 130 half marathon, and again, it was just something I wanted to do myself. Went to the track, managed to get it done, but the paces I was running to do that for a few weeks were ridiculous in relation to what I would normally run.
Yeah.
So then coming off that and going into my training block in January, it was like, just slow everything down, because I'm not going to be running anywhere near those sort of paces for
Yeah.
96 miles. So just
Come race day.
slow,
Yeah.
just slow everything down. That's the kind of the biggest one, I would say.
Yeah,
Uh,
I would wholeheartedly agree with that. I when I met up with Lee at the Inverness Half Marathon a few months ago, I said that about Glasgow to Edinburgh. I said, I just need to learn to slow down.
yeah,
That's my biggest issue. I know that as well, though. I'm fully aware. I just need to learn to slow down. And Sarah Homer was there, and they both went, "Oh, that's a great issue to have." But in terms of wanting to survive distance, wanting
yeah,
to achieve a much bigger distance than I have done to date,
yeah.
slowing down is the way to
Oh,
survive.
slowing down, and specifically for yourself doing Glasgow Edinburgh. I mean, you touched on it earlier, how Amsterdam's perfectly flat. Glasgow, Edinburgh, I think the only hill you've got on it is, aside from the occasional little road that you've got to go up and over, the only hill you've got is at the Falkirk Wheel, where you change between the two canals.
Yeah,
Um, so you need to get a strategy in place for what are you going to do when you get deeper into the race, because at Ultra X, you would have been hiking up the hills, you would
yeah,
have been using different muscle groups, you would have been refueling, you would have been eating as you're going up the hills. There's no opportunity to do that in Glasgow, Edinburgh, and I done it back in 2022, and that, like I said, that was my first step, or my first kind of journey into 50 milers, and I think my longest training run I had run from the start to Linlithgow, which was about 37 miles, and then I came on to the longest half marathon in the world after that on race day,
yeah.
and I was destroyed. My legs were just destroyed, and I actually fell in with a bunch of boys from Ayrshire who had a strategy of running for 4 minutes and walking for a minute, and that saved my race, because you, you you're using different muscle groups, but you're just not using the muscles as hard for that 1 minute and letting them recover, and
Yeah.
then you can actually run properly for the next 4 minutes and then recover. So you just need to have a wee think about that, about what are you going to do when it starts getting sore deeper into the race.
I think a lot of crying.
Yeah,
A lot of crying. I would ask people like AB and Emma, but then they're incredible machines that they're at the finish before the pain even sets in.
yeah,
So no, that is a thought
but
that I have to have, and anyone
but
that's
but
doing it, yeah,
yeah, the other thing to do in Glasgow Edinburgh is great for it, because again I touched on how frequent the checkpoints are, so you can compartmentalise the entire run. So you're not running when you at the Riverside Museum. You're not running from there to Edinburgh. You're running from there to checkpoint one, which is probably about 8 miles.
it's about 7, 8
Yeah.
miles. Yeah,
So you're going an 8 mile run to there, and then you're running from there to Kirkintilloch, which again is probably another 7, 8 miles. So
yeah,
you just chunk that up in your head. If I was to ask you, by the end of your training block, if I was to ask you to go for an 8 mile run, that's going to be a small run on your training block as you
yeah.
as you get to that point. So it's just about, again, it's about playing these mind games with yourself of, I'm not running whatever the distance is. For me on the West Highland Way, I don't think about that 96 miles. I just think about the next checkpoint I'm getting to. And it was only when I got to Glencoe last year that I was like, okay, I can now start thinking about the finish line, because the finish line's 26 miles away.
Yeah.
And I know that I can cover 26 miles. I know I've done 26-mile runs in my training runs. So that's something that I could process in my head at that point.
No, definitely over the weekend when we were down south, I made that conscious decision to reset the car's tripometer and then I tracked the mileage of how it was going to be. In my head, I'm thinking, okay, from this petrol station to where it was for 50k actually, I was thinking to myself, that is a phenomenal distance. When you run that in the Ultra X, I know it's the length of the loch and it doesn't seem that far. But then in context of driving south, and you get to where you get to, just shy of Aviemore from where I
Yeah,
live, just north of Inverness. That's an incredible distance. And then thinking that you've got what is effectively another marathon on top of that to
yeah,
get to where you're going, it's going to have to be a lot of
but yeah,
mindset and mental
yeah,
games.
it's like I said, and I touched on with the track sessions. It's we can train our legs to do. We can train our legs to run as far as we want, but
Yeah,
it's your mind that matters. And they always say with ultras, you run the first half with your legs and the second half with your head. And
yeah.
you can't let it get into your head. You can't let that big number put you off. You just need to keep yourself focused on something that is a manageable chunk.
I also am not going to take it for granted because I've seen the last couple of years from some phenomenal runners that have done great events and great distances, like Davey and Stephen, that didn't quite make it on that day in their given days. And it could be for a number of different reasons, but
Yeah,
I'm not taking it for granted that just because I'm training for it that I'm going to make it from the start to the finish. I'm
yeah.
just
You,
going to
you
have to play that game.
you can have as good a training block as you want, but at the end of the day, you could roll an ankle
Yeah,
within the first mile. These things happen. So long as I always say, so long as you get to that start line and you're not kidding yourself on, and
yeah.
you deserve to be standing on that start line the same as anybody else there that day, then that's all you can ask for. And what happens on race day happens on race day.
I think that's some really wise words there, Stevie. So we'll make an effort now to wrap things up, and I've got a couple of final questions here, but they're easy enough for you to answer.
Sure.
Um, for anyone that is unfamiliar with you, where is the best place they can find you, your handle, etc. And then because I want to do it slightly differently, and because this is the last episode of this current format for the podcast and for the season, is there anyone you would perhaps like us to welcome as a future guest? Is there anyone you want to shout out? I never touched on the fact that you're a Twisted Running ambassador, and being that they support the show by supplying our t-shirts. Um, any or all of it, the mic's open for you now.
So the best place to find me is on Instagram. My handle on there is something I should have updated last year, and I've not got round to it, so I'm probably just going to stick with it. It is 100 kg to 100 km, and there's underscores in between those three words. I've had that for the last two and a half years now. When I was 102 kilograms, and I was my goal at that point was to run 100 kilometers. So neither of those things apply now, but I'm just sticking with that. Um, in terms of future guests, that's I don't I don't know who would be, because the thing is with it, certainly with the Scottish ultra community, like I've got to know so many people through listening to, your podcast when it was Press Play and Run when they were on Young Hearts Run Free.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, you've kind of got me on that one. I've
You
not
can always
really
come
got.
back to it. You can always
Oh,
pop into the DMs and let me know.
yeah, I can. Yeah, I'll have a think about that because there is definitely people out there. And yeah, Twisted Running. Like I actually found out about them because of your t-shirts. Um, yeah, found out about them, ordered one of your t-shirts, and then started looking at more of the kit that they've got. Started buying their kit, and then last year they approached me and asked me if I wanted to be one of their brand ambassadors. And it's one of these things that was I was genuinely running in their kit day in day out, and it was just the perfect match for me.
No, certainly great company, great products. I don't
Yeah,
know how many times I've washed those t-shirts and they're still like
yeah.
the day that
It's
you take them out.
for me it's the shots. And I'll tell you a story. I'll quickly tell you a story about I was due to run GB Ultra Scotland 50 2 years ago. And I had shots like these kind of cargo line shots from Decathlon, pulled them out of the drawer 2 days before I was due to run, and they had a hole in the lining. And that would have been, yeah, every guy just now is probably wincing, thinking, or knowing exactly what that would mean. but that would have been hell to run in. So I actually messaged Ben at Twisted and I said, look, I know this is a weird request, but you do these cargo shots. Is there any chance that I could pay to get them shipped overnight? And straight away he was like, look, don't worry, we'll deal with it. And he sent them out to me. And I broke the cardinal rule of not using something new on race day. I had no choice. Went and used them on race day. They were brilliant. And since then, they've just been my go-to shots for everything I do. They're brilliant.
Perfect. I might have to look at them myself. I'm
They're good.
using 5-inch Pumas at the moment.
Oh
all
no,
the
no,
time.
go with these ones. I've actually got a pair on just now because I am going out for a run after this. But the actual as well as having the waistband to put your gels and things like that, the cargo shots inside have got extra pockets in them,
Perfect.
so you can stick some more gels in. It's brilliant. Like I know I always run with my hydration pack, but yeah,
You don't want to have to
genuinely
take
don't need
that
them.
off and on and you want your
Aye,
pockets to be for other things if you've got
yes,
the ability
yeah,
to. No, that's perfect.
exactly.
No, that's been a great chat, Stevie. Obviously, there's so much more we could cover. But as with everyone that I've had on recently and over the years, more than happy to have you back in the future to go in more depth. I That's why I mentioned there with you having been on other podcasts. Encourage others to go and share that love as well, increase footfall, etc. But no, I've
Yeah.
absolutely loved the time that we've had to speak today.
Well,
You've been such a kind of influence on how the Ultra X went, but also the information you've given there for Glasgow to Edinburgh is going to be
yeah.
so useful.
Well, I love if anybody sends me a message on Instagram, I'll always take the time to reply back. I've had messages over the years from people who were in my or are in my the position I was in a few years ago, where they're just getting into it and they're saying like how can they lose some weight when they're running, or what did I do to start getting into it? And I'll always take the time to reply back to
Yeah,
somebody. But at the same token, when I'm out running with people who are way more experienced than me, I'll glean information from them. So it's kind of the circle of life. I'll quite happily pass that on to anybody that's asking any questions of me.
perfect. Well, we'll draw things to a close now and wish you all the best with your rest of your miles you're getting tonight. But once again, thank you very much for joining me today. That's been an absolute pleasure.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Stevie is one of those guys I saw in the comments of mutual Instagram friends' posts for a good while before we finally had an opportunity to connect, or a good reason to. I've never really been one for a follow or a follow for a follow's sake. I like to have a reason to connect with people, be it a shared event, a shared outlook on running, or a genuine appreciation for what they are doing themselves for the running community, or even for themselves. With Stevie, however, I wish I'd been following him for a little bit longer to track his journey, to see how much he actually does for the running community, not just himself. We mentioned it during the conversation, but we've actually only ever had one opportunity to meet in person. But even with that, it was a meeting where I felt like I'd known the man for years. Effortless conversation with effortless running. And yeah, it just happened to work for everyone involved at the time. Nick Cadden, Stuart runs a lot. That he does. A pleasant adventure along the Clyde, somewhere I haven't really spent a lot of time running. Down through the Clyde Tunnel, somewhere I had never been before. But it just felt really welcoming and super comfortable. And I think in part that was a lot to do with Stevie. He's also been a huge supporter for not only this podcast, but many others in the Scottish podcast circuit, at least within the running sphere. For any long-time regular listeners, you will know that we are generally a fairly solo podcast. We've never really had much to any connection with any of the awesome shows out there, other than Press Play and Run, which sadly ended, and our fondness for the back and forths with Ryan Miller. But there are so many great conversations, including Stevie's, on platforms like Run Till You're Done, of which one of our long-time favourites and past guests is a voice of, Nikki Sheridan, or the Young Hearts Run Free podcast with John Cassidy and Stephen Watt, guys who I wouldn't know from Adam at events or while passing in the street, but who have such a natural ability with speaking to their guests, including some of our past guests and some of the familiar faces I've had the pleasure of meeting over the years in my time within the Scottish circle of running friends that we're all a big part of. There are also a half dozen of other shows that deserve shared love and praise, but I mentioned these three in particular as Stevie is a fan favourite, but also he's been a past guest on a couple of them, sharing his story in a lot more detail or events in more depth. And I'd honestly encourage anyone to look out and listen to these episodes. I'll try my best to link each of the episodes in the description and tag the other podcasts to make it easier to find them. Certainly for any long runs, when you have just one episode from one podcast, it's never really going to ever see you all the way through. So to have a multitude of other podcasts is always going to be most beneficial for you guys during those longer runs. And if I can do my part to raise up and share the love to other podcasts, even ones that have a bigger following or are, like I jokingly say, better than us, we all have our place. We all have different things that we do. But yeah, if I can do my part, then I will certainly do that. But it's not just his support for the Point 99 and subsequent ambassadorial role with our pals at Twisted Running that gives Stevie a gold star. I could honestly just sit and talk to him for hours. He's such a nice guy, where conversations just seem to flow, even like I said at the beginning, before, during, and after hitting the record button. As I say with every guest, if you don't already follow the man, please consider doing so. But I really mean it with Stevie. Show him the love, praise, and support that he shows to so many others, be it joining them in social runs, dropping in their comments, raising them up, supporting their endeavours, or taking some awesome photos of them at various events that he selflessly gives his time to help support. But with that, and all being said, I guess I better ought to start wrapping things up for the season. I'm taking a couple of weeks off. I've mentioned it a couple of times throughout the last few episodes, but it's not for long, not nearly as long as the mid-season break at least, as I want to refresh the visual shine for the podcast. It'll be the same message and same general content. Gone will be the tarot cards, and in will be a fresh cut, clean shave, and a nice new fragrant scent. Until then, thank you as always for joining me with this episode. Downloading and streaming the podcast will forever be the best way to show your support for the show, especially on both Spotify and Apple. If you haven't already, please consider dropping us a rating on either or both, as it honestly helps so much. With Stevie being an ambassador and wearer of the Point 99 tee from our partners at Twisted Running, which I haven't mentioned for a couple of episodes, maybe even consider hopping over to their website and maybe investing in one of our t-shirts. If not, checking out their various range of catalogues that they have available. Their products are really high quality, high level of finish, and like I mentioned to Stevie, I don't know how many times I've washed my personal podcast t-shirts and they're still almost as good as new. Any money spent with Twisted also helps support a fantastic family-run brand who have on year grown and grown and grown, and it's a pleasure to have seen that happen. If you want to check out their website and their catalogues, you can do so at twistedrunning.co.uk. Finally, you can follow us on Instagram by searching the Point 99 podcast. That's the best way you can get in immediate contact with us through the DMs. Or if you want to give a little bit more detailed recant of your thoughts and feelings on the episode or the past few episodes, you can do so via email to thepoint99podcast@gmail.com. You can also find me, as always, on my own Instagram account at Mr_Steve_runs. Then the final cherry on the cake. Let me know what you might want to hear more about in the future, or guests that you might want to hear featured going forward, and I'll see what I can do. Stevie did actually mention after we stopped recording 2 names, one who has been a previous guest and one who hasn't. One of them, the previous guest, is already lined up to come back after they finish their most recent and forthcoming kind of big adventure, and they also have a other big adventure that we haven't spoken about, so it could be quite a meaty episode, that one. And then for the other person he mentioned, it would be fantastic to have them on if they were willing to do so, and learn a little bit more about them and what they have going on. If you have any suggestions though, please hop into the DMs, hop onto the emails, and we will see what we can make happen. But otherwise, and as always, please stay safe, enjoy your runs, and you will hear from me soon.